What up, though? I'm your host, Young Tune the Man, and it's the BlackShot podcast. Let's get to it.
Keep it 100 and kill yourself. Don't bullshit with it.
Topic number one is black people and sneakers. What in the world makes gym shoes so attractive to us? Maybe they're a status symbol, maybe they're just comfortable, maybe they're fashionable, maybe they're useful, like, utility purposes, right? But what is it about sneakers and black folks, right? Why is that? Why is that such a common pairing? And when you take it back a ways, right? In circa 1930, 1940, 1950, we didn't wear sneakers. We wore work shoes or we wore dress shoes, rock shoes, either at work or you were sharp. You didn't really wear, gym shoes or sneakers for that matter outside of uh, working out, really, right? All your gym shoes had a purpose. So when you wore those shoes, right, they had a purpose because you were performing the function of the shoes you were wearing, right? So that made sense. Now you got people who don't even own a pair of dress shoes. Like they wear gym shoes to do everything, like everything. Or they go to work in gym shoes. They go to school in gym shoes. They go to buy new gym shoes while wearing gym shoes. Like everything they do is revolves around gym shoes. But if you ask them, they don't play nan sport. They're not a real athletic person. What do you do? Oh, I'm a computer programmer. Or I go to school for dance. But they don't wear gym shoes in dance class. Like that's what they wear, like different shoes for that, right? So like, you know what I mean? Like their whole life revolves around gym shoes, though they don't do anything athletic in the athletic shoes, right? For black people, I think for the most part, like we started using them as a function, and then they became a status symbol because we didn't have many functions, or we didn't have the means to afford different shoes for different functions. You probably got one good pair of shoes, and that was the pair of shoes you had as a kid, right? So like you wore that pair of shoes to pretty much everything. The same pair of shoes you wore to school was the same shoes you played in gym class in. The same pair of shoes you wore to school was the same pair of shoes you wore to church in, right? Put on your new sneakers, right? Because that was the nicest pair of shoes you had. Things like that, right? So it became a fashion statement. You had to make your outfits match. And of course, music and fashion kind of played a role in that, right? Oh, the latest sneakers, be like Mike or Run DMC or MC Hammer, right? You got to have the Barclays or the Ewings, right? The Stan Smiths, right? The Shell Toes, the Adidas Superstars, that sort of thing, right? So it became more about the look of the shoe vice the function of the shoe. It became more about the style and people's response to it versus the actual thing itself. So that's my take on black people and sneakers, right? Yeah, and also one other thing about that is we spend way too much money on fucking sneakers. Like, beat that ass what you be. We spend way too much money on sneakers. It's not a necessity to have 35 pairs of fucking sneakers. And out of those 35 pairs of fucking sneakers, like 17 of them are the same fucking shoe, just different variations of the same fucking shoe. It's like, oh, you got ones that got red bottoms and blue laces, and then you got the other one that's got blue bottoms and red laces, and then you got some that's got like, oh, these is orange with green stripes on the side, but it's the same one as the red and the blue ones and the blue and the red ones, like the same fucking shoe, B. You don't need 50 variations of the same fucking shoe. That's just my take on it. We spend way too much money on sneakers. I'm a victim of that. I buy a lot of fucking sneakers. There's a whole culture built around motherfucking sneakers. Hashtag sneakerhead, that type of thing. But we're gonna move along to the next topic. You dig? What white people think black people think. Now that's gonna be a real controversial topic because you're assuming the thought process and patterns of another person, and or in this case group of people, right? And the reason I worded this topic like this, what white people think, what black people think, is because oftentimes when we do things, we get asked the question, well, what were you thinking, right? And we get asked many questions that assume we were thinking one way or another. Excuse me. And that's why we did one thing vice another, right? So say we go to the store. Black guy goes in the store and white guy follows him around the store. Black guy subsequently grabs a drink out of the cooler, turns to the white guy and says, "You gonna pay for this for me? Then why is you following me around the store?" Right? And everybody's like, "Well, what were you thinking confronting a guy like that?" Right? He was like, "No, he was fucking following me. He was racially profiling me. But you don't have to confront him like that." Like, that's, to me, that's crazy, right? If you're presenting me with the problem and I feel that it's a problem, I'm going to confront you about the problem, right? But then that begs another problem of are we too confrontational, right? And that's always a thing. It's like, oh, well, you're too confrontational. Nah, B. You know, and people we think a certain thing. Oh, you think you're better. Or you think you're smarter. You think you're faster. You think just because you're black, we're supposed to do this. It's like, no. Because I'm me, I think what I think. Because that person is who they are, they think the way that they think. And it's interesting to see what they think that we think. Because that shows you their perception of us and their perception of our behavior. And like, you listen to these different interactions with white folks in different places, right? Like, for example, white cop, black driver, and it goes sideways because somebody thinks the other person thinks something crazy in most cases, right? So the driver thinks the cop thinks something crazy, the cop thinks the driver thinks something crazy, and everybody's misinterpreting everybody's signals because one person is assuming what the other person thinks. So instead of just assuming what the other person thinks, how about you just ask them what the fuck they think? And we'd be a lot better off in that aspect. I know in some situations that's kind of difficult, sort of like the cop driver situation, right? But don't assume that somebody thinks either positively or negatively about you just because, until they show that in that behavior. Now, if they show that in that behavior, then it's like, hey, you go ask for confirmation, or if you can see it, like, oh yeah, this person thinks this way about me or that way about me because they blatantly do these things that are indicative of thinking that way. Then you put that person aside and you have a conversation about it. But I think it's always interesting to see what white folks think that black people think, because they don't know what it's like to be us. And walking a day in our shoes would be a millennia for them because our days are super long comparatively especially in the U.S., when you have to deal with, oh, I have to be a man, I have to be black, I have to be educated. Then it's like, oh, because I'm all of those things naturally, right? Then I have to contour what I say. I have to contour how I dress. I have to contour how I style my hair. I have to contour how I utilize my hands. I have to do all of these things that are limiting based on the fact that I'm a black educated man, and that's a struggle. And for women as well, it's effectively the same thing, right? They gotta contour themselves as a woman. They gotta contour themselves as black. They gotta contour themselves as educated. They have to contour all of those things to fit what is socially acceptable in the space or place that they're at, based on the fact that they're an educated black woman, and that's bullshit. And it shouldn't be that way, but it is what it is, right? So that's why them walking a day in our shoes is a millennia for them. All right. So that's my take on what white people think, black people think. So we're gonna move it right along. All right. So topic 3 for the day is, what is a black-owned business? So a black-owned business, right, is an American business, or a business in general, that is owned by a black person, right, or black people. But when you think about it, right, there's many different ways that we finesse the term black-owned business. Because if there's somebody who produces a product, right, say you produce sneakers, you Chinese man, or you Arabic man, or you Italian man, or you German man. Say it's the German company and they make sneakers, and I think the sneakers are fucking dope. So what do? I go license me a company, and I go buy a bunch of fucking sneakers from this company, from you German company who makes fucking sneakers, and I bring those sneakers to America and I sell those sneakers in America. Now, because I bought so many of them from you and then I resell them, I'm a black-owned business, but I'm not selling a black-produced product, right? So there's a difference between being a black-owned business and being a black manufacturer or being a black producer of a thing, right? So I'm merely selling a product. Or a lot of times when people get into business where they'll get licensing to resell or sell a product, and they'll take a portion of the profits, and that's how they make their money. It's like, oh, okay, great. Hey, how about I open a store and I'll pay you 30% up front, and you'll give me 700 pairs of shoes at 30% up front, right? And when I get them, I'll up the charge a little bit. Like I'll up the price per shoe, $10, $15, $20, right? And it'll help kind of offset that 30% cost. And then when I when I sell a shoe, I upsold it $10, $15, $20, right? And now I can pay you the cost of the shoe back. And then I've got that profit, right? So to make, to put this in numerical terms, right? I may buy 100 pairs of shoes from this cat. You may forward me 100 pairs of shoes at 30%. So 30%, say the shoes are $50, right? Shoes are $50, right? Half of that is going to be $25, right? So 30% is going to be like $30-ish, right? So 30% is going to be like somewhere between like 26, like now 30% is going to be like not even $30-ish. 30% is going to be more like $20-ish, right? Because 50% would be 25, so it's going to be like $17.50 or something like that, right? So in the somewhere between $17 to $20, it's 30%. So now I'm paying you $17 per shoe, and the cost of the shoe is $50, right? So I'm gonna upcharge that shoe to $65, because if I gotta pay you $17 a shoe up front, and then I gotta cover that $50 difference, right? I'm gonna upsell that shoe for $100, $120, right? Because now I'm making the $50 I had to pay you for the shoe plus some, right? Cool. That's and that's the name of the game. And all I'm doing is getting shoes on consignment. So you're gonna front me the shoes. I'm gonna pay you a small percentage of it up front, and then I'm gonna pay you the bulk of it on the back end after I sell the shoes. And all I'm doing is reselling your product. I'm just selling your product for you, right? At a higher cost, but at my store. So now I'm a black-owned business, but once again, I'm just selling somebody else's goods, right? I'm not a producer. I'm not a manufacturer, and I'm just facilitating the availability of the thing, right? So that's one way. The other way is if, say, I was a designer, right? I'm a black-owned business, and I make a thing, and I make shoes, right? So I go to Foot Locker and I get my shoes sold in Foot Locker, but I make the shoe. I'm a black-owned business. What do you do? I design gym shoes, and what happened? My gym shoes are sold in Foot Locker, Champs, Foot Action, Journey. Journeys. Jimmy Jazz, right? So you and your son going Jimmy Jazz, and you cop my new sneakers. Bam. Now you just paid. You didn't even pay a black-owned business. What you paid was Jimmy Jazz, because that's where you bought the shoes from. But because before Jimmy Jazz could put my shoe on their shelf, they paid me. They might have paid me a small portion. They might have paid me a small percentage up front, right? They might have paid me full up front. They might have paid me a small percentage up front. Whew. Excuse me. They might have even paid me half up front, right? But I still got my money, right? So I got paid before you even paid for the shoe. Dig it. And they probably upcharged you on the shoe so they could make a profit and pay me the rest of my money if they didn't pay it all up front. So if they paid it all up front, that's all profit they making right there. They ain't even got to pay me back shit. So you not paying me, you paying them. Okay, cool. That's another way to make a black-owned business, right? So you got two dynamics for making a black-owned business. Now, the other dynamic for making a black owned business is you produce a thing and you sell the thing, so it goes direct to consumer, right? So what that means is you cut out the middleman, right? It goes from, hey, you the producer, like, so for me, I say I make sneakers, right? If I'm selling my sneakers out the trunk of my car, then, or if I'm selling my sneakers, I'm smelling my sneakers out the trunk of my car, I'm selling them via my website, or I'm selling them at pop-up shops, right? I'm making the sneakers. I'm not customizing nobody else's shit. I'm not reselling nobody else's shit. I designed the sneaker. I had the sneaker manufactured, and I'm there selling the sneakers, right? Straight to consumer, straight directly, like, you know, from my thought into my action. Put a, you know, my thought of a design got put into production, and then this item is in my hand, going to you who's paying me cash money for it, right? That's another way of having a black owned business, another way to facilitate this concept, right? So now you're looking at a third way to do this, right? So now you get into you can get into the other ways where there's like partnering and what, excuse me, you got like partnering and whatnot, to where you got multiple businesses, multiple different entities going in to produce a good or goods and or a service, right? Okay, so now you got all of this. You got these four ways of building a black-owned business, right? And the question is, what is a black-owned business? So is a black-owned business you putting your name on somebody else's thing? Is a black-owned business you putting your name on the thing and have somebody else sell it for you? Is it you making the thing and then selling the thing directly to the customer? You know what I'm saying? Like, what method, what avenue would you consider being an authentic black-owned business? And to me, I look at it as all three of them are black-owned businesses, because I have to say it that way, because business is business. You know, the act of commerce, buying and selling, trading at value for goods and services is commerce, right? So long as commerce is taking place between at least one black person and someone else, if the one black person owns the rights to the goods and or service, then it's a black-owned business. Like, that's really the breakdown of it, right? That's like the gist of it. That's the meat and potatoes. That's the rice and beans. You know, that's the gist of it. So if you got a legitimate business as a black person and you're providing a good or a service, that's a black-owned business. What many of us would prefer is that you're the producer of the goods that you're selling. Don't just be a retail person for Nike. Don't just be another retail facility for Reebok or for K-Swiss or for Gucci or for Prada or for New Balance or for Adidas, right? You know, be a retailer for another black-owned business. If you own a business to where you can sell you do retail for other people's products, then do retail for other black-owned products. You know what I'm saying? You know, that type of thing. That's where you really make the authentic black-owned business, and you help build the black-owned community again, because we now have an outlet for all of our creative concepts and ideas, right? We can put them to life. Like, if you can design t-shirts, but you don't got the facility to make t-shirts, but I do, you bring me your designs, I make your t-shirts, right? So you design the shirt, I make the shirt, and I got a partner with a shop. We put the shirts in my partner's shop. Bam! Like, now everybody's gonna get a cut out of the sale of that shirt, obviously, right? But that is a completely black-owned business. Now, what shall I say? That's almost a completely black-owned business. The other part is we gotta find a black person who makes the fucking shirts, and literally, I mean, stitches the shirts. Boom. Most companies don't care who stitches their fucking shirts as long as they get to pay them less than the competitor. Black people actually care about who's stitching the shirts. Why? Because we were told for so long we couldn't have a business. We were told for so long we couldn't do a thing. Since we couldn't do a thing, we have to do a thing. We have to care more about the details of the things that we can do, because for so long we were told we couldn't do things, right? So that's my take on the black-owned business. It's been an interesting day. You know, we went through our 3 topics. You know, black people in sneakers, what white people think, black people think, and what is a black-owned business. It's your host, Young Tony Man. It's the BlackShot Podcast. What up, dog?
I'm at your neck, son.